All right, hello and welcome everyone to another edition of Ezoic Office Hours. I am Tyler Bishop, the head of marketing here at Ezoic, and along with me today is
I'm Jan Kreidenberg. I'm one of the account managers here. My first time actually on Office Hours, so I'm pretty excited about this.
Yeah, welcome. So if you guys have never been on Office Hours before, what we do is if you sign up more than 24 hours before the live webinar, we send out a form to everybody where you can submit questions ahead of time. And so we get to those questions first. We have 6 today, and then we start getting into all the different questions that you guys submit below. So if you guys have questions, you can submit them here below or into the chat, and we will answer questions until we are out of time or we run out of questions. So Jan, let's get started.
Cool.
So the very first question we have, I'm not sure if it's more of a question or if it's maybe a comment. Maybe they can clarify, but Jan, I'll let you answer. It says, could you revise the clear caching system so that when we clear the cache of any individual subdomains, not the entire site? I do not see a way to do that, nor clear a single page in a particular subdomain. Leaving unedited subdomains cache intact would be more efficient for this publisher.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that I totally understand where they're coming from. If you do get a significant amount of traffic to different subdomains, it is important. This would be a feature request. It's something that, feedback like this is obviously good, and we can certainly talk to the tech team about this and figure out a way to make this a possibility. So yeah, I guess it's not currently possible, but it's something that we certainly need to work on, and as we continue to bring on more publishers, it's definitely something we'll get sorted out.
Next question is, how can I drill down and view the pages that earn the most money, and how can I generate a report that shows top keywords that generated the most income? So actually, I prepared some slides for this question because it's a concept that we get asked a lot, and this is one of those areas of, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, so just bear with me here 1 second. So this is a question that comes up a lot, Jan, with a lot of the things that we do here at Ezoic. And so this is something that I really, really want to try to emphasize, because I know sometimes I feel like for you guys that are American, there was this politician back in the 90s by the name of Ross Perot. And Ross Perot went on time on television to try to explain to the American people how the Federal Reserve worked, and things kind of were over everyone's head whenever he got on TV and did that. And I kind of feel like that sort of when we explain this. But I really believe that if publishers understand this math, it will really benefit them from a revenue standpoint long term. So there are a couple things that will never tell you or never give you an accurate representation of how much revenue you're actually earning per visitor. CPMs, eCPMs, page revenue, which pages you think are actually generating the most revenue, weekly or monthly total earnings. These things actually will not tell you how much you're earning per visitor, which is ultimately what you're trying to increase. Is you want to make as much money off of the traffic coming to your site as possible in a ethical and in a way that doesn't affect user experience and all that kind of stuff as well. And so let me give you a good example of the math behind this. So scenario 1, you have a page eCPM, which means the effective total of all of the CPMs on the page. So how much revenue is that page generating from ads? Let's say it's $10, and you're getting the visitors that land on that page are generating 1.5 page views per visit, 10,000 sessions. That's a total of 15,000 page views at that $10 eCPM. You're going to make about $150 in revenue. So not bad, right? So now let's look at what happens if you actually have a lower eCPM on a page that generates 2.5 page views per visit. So visitors that are landing on that page are visiting more page views, are visiting more pages on average, but the page that they're landing on is essentially generating less overall revenue. So same 10,000 sessions, it actually results in 25,000 page views, so more page views at that lower eCPM, you're actually going to generate $200 in revenue. And so it is actually, you're going to make more money off a lower eCPM in this scenario because it's taking into account user experience. So my point in this is that what we should really, at the head of myself, is you should really be focusing on and measuring ePMV. earnings per 1,000 visitors. This is telling you how much money you're earning per visitor. So traffic can go up and down. So if you made more this week than you did last week, it doesn't necessarily mean you're actually earning more revenue from every visitor. You could be earning less. You may just have more traffic. So when traffic goes up and down and you have all these different moving parts on your site, the one true north that you have to determine whether or not you're actually earning more money off the traffic that comes to your site or earning less money off of it is to actually look at EPMB, which is really simple to measure. You just take 1,000 or your earnings divided by 1,000 visitors, and that will give you a really good idea. Now, one of the things that I wanted to show you guys here was if you want to look at actually what pages are generating the most revenue on your site, one of the best ways to do this is to go into advanced reporting inside of Ezoic here. Click on advanced reporting. And then right here, you see where it says quick reports. You can go over here and click on landing page and then run it for a certain date range. In this case, these are two very small websites that I actually operate. So I apologize, they don't have tons of traffic, but they'll serve their purpose in this example.
The content's amazing, though.
Yeah, the content is great. So it's about a month. We've got about a month period of time here. And what I can see here is my visits, page views, engaged page views, engaged time, bounce rates, all that kind of stuff. But I can also see the EPMB as well. So I can look through here and see I have some pretty low EPMBs for these different landing pages. And you can see some of these are traffic dependent, but you can see here the home page for my Bishop BJJ site, which is a jiu-jitsu website. I actually have a higher EPMB than normal. So I may look at this from an RPM standpoint or look at the total amount of revenue that page earns, and it may end up being lower than some of my other pages, but overall the people that are landing on this page are generating more revenue for me overall long term. So the best way to actually look at which pages are generating the most revenue is to actually look at things by landing page. By understanding which landing pages actually generate the highest EPMBs, that's going to give you a better idea of directionally what types of content you want to create, where you want to start to drive traffic, where you want to put other links, because when you generate those additional page views, and that's assuming here that people are on average visiting, and you can see here this is the case, you know, my engaged page views for this is much higher as well. That explains the higher EPMB. These are the stats that you really want to be looking at if you want to increase total session revenue, which is ultimately going to increase your bottom line more than just about anything else. And it accounts for user experience, so it's actually directionally the way you want to go too if you care about the experience that your visitors have. And so that's sort of a long answer, Jan, to that question.
Yeah.
But I think it's a good one for our publishers to understand.
Yeah, I agree. And then, I mean, just to expand on that, you can also look at it, you know, maybe by traffic source, for example. Maybe see, okay, you know, a certain traffic source is actually monetizing much better, whether it's, you know, Google organic or Facebook. Just other ways to see, you know, how your visitors are coming to the site and then where you're making the most overall from the sessions.
Yeah, and if you want to look at keywords, I know that's another question as well. What you can do is actually look at those landing pages from Ezoic, so knowing that those landing pages are the ones that actually generate the most revenue for you overall, and then go into Google Search Console and then just run a quick report of your search traffic and look at your keywords and see which keywords are driving to which landing pages, and that'll give you a good idea of which keywords are associated with which landing pages, so you can pretty quickly there pull out a top 5 or a top 10 or something like that. All right, so next question is, and on the pre-submitted stuff, we will get to all this questions below and in the chat here in a moment. When using ad tester, is it okay to wrap aside type content in Ezoic ad tags so content appears if an ad is not placed in that location?
Yeah, so this is actually something that we wouldn't recommend you do. So if you think about it, you know, you're able to split traffic between your original setup and the Ezoic setup. If you're wrapping with a placeholder, then, you know, potentially half your visitors are going to be seeing some aside content that could be important to the article people are reading, and other times people are seeing an ad there. So I think, you know, the biggest concern I think I would have is it's going to impact your user experience, right? So if the aside content is valuable to the article, you want it to be there all the time. If there's something like a house ad, or maybe you're trying to promote a ebook or something like that, then that's totally fine to wrap. But I think from a UX standpoint, even potentially from an SEO standpoint, it's probably not a good idea to be wrapping any sort of content that is valuable.
It's a great point. Next question is, does implementing Ezoic on a website / WordPress site affect SEO in any way? So this is a really good question, and something we actually just did a study on. So I'll go over a couple quick graphs for you guys. And we actually do have a whole case study on how Ezoic affects SEO. In almost every case, Ezoic affects SEO very positively because we're looking at user experience, right? And so the machine learning process of Ezoic is always trying to extend sessions, reduce bounce rate, increase page views, all that kind of stuff. So it's taking that into account when every visitor visits the page. So what's nice about this is that it means that those are also signals that systems like Google looks at. Well, let me share my screen already. So the bottom. Here we go. So if I go over and go to blog.ezoic.com, one of the first blogs is up right now. Is we just did a case study on how sites that have been using Ezoic for over 2 years have fared from a revenue standpoint and from an SEO standpoint. And so you can see, you can kind of dig into some of that here, but I want to compile just kind of a quick synopsis of it here for you guys. So right here, you can see, here's where you see that little bubble. That's whenever the site started using Ezoic, and you can see in every case, overall over the long term, the site has improved SEO as they go, and we have probably hundreds and hundreds of examples of this. It's not something we tout up front because it's really not the primary objective for the tool, but because it is always personalizing every session for the user, it generally improves user experience metrics, which is always viewed favorably by search engines and that sort of thing. So let's see. Next question. How many websites are currently using Ezoic? Jan?
Yeah, so I would say at any given point in time, there's around 3,000. Obviously, there are sites, coming and going, as I'm sure some of you have, but yeah, at least 3,000, and we're growing year over year, continuing to add sites to the platform.
And then the last one that we have on the pre-submissions is, what is the average time for a 1,000-page website to see higher earnings with Ezoic?
So it actually isn't going to be based off of pages. It's going to be based off number of visitors. So, we always talk about improving session revenue, and for each individual ad combination on a page or on the site, it's going to take at least 7,000 visits to view that with statistical confidence. And every person is going to, if they're visiting 1,000 different pages, they're going to respond differently to each page of your site. Maybe you have a really short article that people grab the content quickly, what they need, and then leave. Other pages, you could have a long article and then they continue to go to other pages. Each page is going to, be monetized differently. So what we're looking at is, okay, let's look at the overall user sessions, and then using that data, we can cluster it into, okay, so this type of user may enter this page, and then they typically see 2 or 3 pages. Other users maybe go to just 1 page, but it's really about the overall users per page, and I said 7,000 visits per ad combination. So depending on how many visitors you're getting to your site is really what it's going to come down to.
Yeah, and one of the other things you could start to do as well is, I keep hammering that case study that's on blog.ezoic.com, but if you want to get an idea of how some sites have fared in the past, actually I'll share my screen just one more time here so that you guys I can maybe point a couple things out inside of this. So I apologize for just bouncing back and forth here. So one of the things that's interesting about this, so this site gets 1.2 million visitors a month, 89% of it's organic traffic, and you can kind of see how their EPMV has been affected over time. Almost every site that we included in this case study was an evergreen site, meaning very little changed on it. That means that they're mainly just kind of getting organic traffic over time from the same keywords. So they're changing very few other things on the site. So you can see as Ezoic learns here, you can see kind of the time period over which the EPMV has grown. And it's very similar for a lot of these sites. You can see here, you got to take into account things like seasonality and that sort of thing. But generally, it is a linear progression up. You don't see this hard spike. It's usually this really strong growth. But you can see almost every case, every site in the case study over the course of 2 years doubled their EPMB, which is a really important thing to take into account, because as we mentioned earlier, it kind of gives you a true north of how much you're earning per visitor. So that's a really important signal. So again, if that's something that's of interest to you, go read the new case study that we have out there. All right, so let's get into some of the questions we have here in the chat. So let's see, at the very bottom, Harshal just put mobile. So Harshal, I don't know if you had a more dynamic question than just mobile. I don't know that we can derive enough from just that statement to answer your question. But if you have something specific about mobile, let us know. Gwen asks, I have a question about the Ezoic Premium program. Do the private marketplace deals have anything to do with programmatic guaranteed deals of DoubleClick? If so, what's the connection?
Yeah, so the private marketplace deals, this is, to give you a little background, so Premium is for some of our long-standing publishers. And so we actually have a team here that is going out to advertisers individually and making these deals outside of the marketplaces completely. So what they're doing, the people in Premium are in for, you're in for a monthly or a yearly contract. And by doing that, we know that we have this inventory that we can guarantee to advertisers. So we can go, and this is all outside of the programmatic deals. We're actually going to people and saying, we have this much inventory and we're negotiating much higher CPM rates for that. So then, once those are put into the system, think of this as completely separate. The inventory does go into the exchange, the programmatic buying and selling as well, but these CPMs are so high that most of the time, you're going to be getting much higher rates, but they're totally separate. So I think one thing a lot of people have asked me is, I see the Ezoic ad partners and I see programmatic, and they ask, is the programmatic revenue taking away from what I was making with just the normal ad partners? And the answer is no, it's completely separate. So think of these two things as totally different earnings.
Excellent. Gwen also asked, she said, if I want to switch web hosts and remain a client with Ezoic, are there any special steps I should take, any special concerns related to Ezoic?
Yeah, so since we're integrated at the DNS level, when you guys integrate with Ezoic, our system pulls in your IP address for your host, and that allows it to go and grab the content from the right place. If you switch web hosts, you don't have to remove integration with Ezoic at all. It's actually really easy. You just need to give us a heads up, or if you get the real IPs or the new IPs from your new host that you're switching to, you just go into Ezoic. It's in the DNS settings in Ezoic, and you update your IP address there. If you're concerned about this at all, feel free to reach out to support at Ezoic or to your account manager, and we're more than happy to help. But it's a very smooth process. I've done it with hundreds of sites, so there should be no problems at all.
Next question comes from Patu. Says, can you tell us the criterion you set for admission into the Ezoic Premium program? And 2, do you have plans for an Android app? So I'll quickly address them, Jan, and you can kind of hop in. Yeah. So the first one is, I'll let Jan kind of speak to the Premium program a little bit more, but it is still in a beta stage, and we are still delving into all the different ways that we scale it. Jan can pop into that a little bit more. As it relates to plans for an Android app, the answer is not currently, from the standpoint of we are working a lot on some technology that will allow publishers to implement things like PWAs, which is a progressive web app, which we think is going to offer a lot more opportunity to publishers in the very short term. I think you're going to start hearing Facebook and Google start talking about these things a lot. Not only PWAs, but what they're calling progressive web amps. So leveraging the Google AMP technology into the form of a progressive web app. We'll have some new material out on this soon and about the benefits of it, but a progressive web app is essentially all the functionality of a app and on a web page that a user can basically download and access offline as well. And so a lot of this kind of material is going to offer benefits to publishers that derive traffic from Facebook, Google, etc., because it's going to make the pages much, much faster and give you a lot of really interesting user experience stuff that you can access on a mobile device. So monetization for that sort of thing should be really excellent. and we'll have some really good technology around that material here soon. But Jan, maybe you can speak to the premium program a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, there's not really a set in stone criteria. I will say we've been opening it up to publishers that have been longstanding and been with us for a year or two on the platform. They kind of know how things work, and yeah, I mean, the problem with opening it to everybody is there is a lot of work on our end. So I mentioned the private marketplace deals. We have a team that actually is going out and making these deals. That takes a lot of time, and then also some of the dev work on the back end to open up some of these some of the other features for premium just take a lot of time. So like I said, we're still working on scaling it. There's not really a criteria right now. It's just invite based on publishers that have been working with us for quite a while.
Excellent, thank you. Sandy, I know she's got a couple questions because she posted some in the chat. Sandy, I'm going to get to your questions in the chat first, and then I'll get to the question down here in the topic section. So the questions in the chat were, I want to know what pages on our site generated the most income per views in order to focus SEO efforts. When I ran the reports, they kept timing out. Jan, I'll let you get to the timing out part. The best thing that I would say from an SEO standpoint, if you want to focus on the pages that are generating the most revenue, is I would look at the landing pages that are generating the most, and then I would cross-reference those inside of analytics or search console to figure out what keywords are driving traffic to those landing pages. What you're going to come away with is probably some themes. So I don't know what kind of niche topic your site is, but let's use recipes, for example. If you have a recipe site, that's always the one that I use as an example. I don't know why. But let's say you find out that your landing pages about pies tend to generate the highest EPMBs, which means the visitors that land on those pages are either generating the most revenue or visiting enough pages to where they're generating the most revenue per session. And so what you would want to do and take with that is not like, let's say you've got one on pumpkin pie and cherry pie, is basically go out and figure out, okay, what other pie related articles can I generate? And not only that, is the volume there. So use keyword tools like Moz's Keyword Finder, Keyword Planner to basically figure out, is the volume there for these additional content ideas that I have? So if all my pie articles are doing great and I don't have anything on apple pie, before I write that apple pie article, I should probably check the keyword volume to make sure there's a market for it out there. And if there is, then I would say that would be a really good bet in terms of content that I create that's probably going to be valuable. So I would look at landing pages, and then I would go into analytics or search console and figure out what specific types of keywords are driving traffic to those pages. And it's worth checking too, because just because a page might be about mountain biking or something like that, you may find out that you're ranking for a whole bunch of bike review key terms because you may have a bunch of bike review information in there. Who knows? Just trying to speak broadly about the topic. But Jan, about reports timing out.
Yeah. So my guess is maybe you're looking at a date range that is too broad. And so if you think about it, if you're looking at last few months, that could be a ton of visits and a ton of page views. So what I would recommend is, if you could start by maybe, we talked about earlier with Tyler doing 2 weeks, and then also if it's still taking a long time, maybe you have a high traffic site. What you can also do is put a filter in that says visits is greater than 1,000, for example. And so then if you have a few pages that are 5 page views or a ton that are just really low volume, that's still a lot of data that the system has to process. So by kind of just excluding those completely, then you're going to be able to look at your highest visited pages and kind of view the data that way.
Tennessee, your question says, is there a way to see since last year? Can I order one from you? I'm not sure exactly what you're talking about. If you're talking about data from any standpoint, whether it's keyword data or EPMV information, etc. If you're having trouble getting any of that data, you can contact us, the account management team, and we'll help you access any of the data that you need and put that together for you. Yep, it'd be no problem.
So yeah, I guess just on that topic, the advanced reporting, it's only been available if you go to the advanced reporting tab, Tyler.
Yeah. Let me just share my screen.
So if you scroll up, yeah, we started it. Okay, so it is starting November 5th of 2015. So it should have all of last year's data. Like Tyler said, if you want to look at last year's data, we can work on maybe pulling something for you, or we can work with you to figure out the right criteria to put in so that it doesn't time out.
All right, and so we have, do you offer an online course and or certification with Ezoic? That's a good question. So it's actually something that I'm working on right now, is what resources we could make available to publishers that would be helpful both in the training and education department. So we've talked about more office hours opportunities. We've talked about online user groups where basically we would do something similar to an office hours, but every edition would kick off with a review of a certain part of the Ezoic system and how to use it properly. And then we've also talked about just putting together a series of training videos on our different applications. So if you'd like to provide feedback to that and to help maybe guide me in some of the things that we're trying to put together that are helpful to publishers, you can message me at tbishop@ezoic.com, and I'd be happy to hear your thoughts, as this is something we're trying to round out now. And kind of part of the purpose of office hours, and this is what we've generally, the feedback that we've got before, publishers want to ask questions, but we do want to try to be as proactive as possible in training. And then Kendrick says, is there an average increase when going from the ad tester to layout ad tester? Thank you.
Yeah, so I would say, I mean, with ad tester, you know, mostly we're seeing on average a 60% increase at least. With layout tester, it's, you know, closer to 125, 150% increase. But one thing that I do want to point out is there is a lot more that needs to be tested with layout tester. So if you're looking at ad tester, you know, it's different combinations within your existing layout. With, you know, layout tester is kind of ad tester on steroids, where we're not only testing the ad combinations, we're also testing different menus, different layouts. Is it 2-column? Is it 3-column? All of those also need, you know, 7,000 visits. So it does, over time, it's going to lead to probably a 100 to 150 increase, but you need to be patient with it.
Yeah, so if you look at the case study on that front page of the blog, you can see all the sites in the blog saw over 100% increase, and they were all using layout tester to some degree. We usually start sites out on mobile layout tester, right, Jan? And generally there is we did another case study at an event we did at Google a couple years ago, where we looked at sites that had started on ad tester and then moved to layout tester. And this is generally what we find is a really good formula for publishers that use the Ezoic system. So ad tester is a really good way to kind of get your feet wet in leveraging machine learning to kind of like treat all visitors that come to your site differently. Some may like ads in certain locations, some may prefer different densities, and publishers are generally really comfortable with the idea of their ads moving around on their page depending on who's visiting the site. Layouts is a little bit different. Once you understand that all visitors prefer something different, it's usually a lot easier to understand that, you know, changing things like the navigation in the menu, which may not, to me as the publisher, look like the right way something should look. For certain visitors, it may provide them with a better experience, and better experience meaning lower bounce rate, more page views, and higher EPMVs. And so generally, once publishers have been using ad tester for a while, then we'll usually start to make the recommendations of using layout tester on mobile. And usually at that point on the case studies that we've done, there's usually a pretty significant bump again. But like Jan said, one of the key things here is just kind of the patience with it, because the system learns by testing, right? So Ezoic is a machine learning software, which means that it is learning from behavior over time. And the only way the system can actually learn how people behave is to figure out when people like Jan visit and we show something here, we add navigation here versus navigation there. What's the difference in his behavior? And so I need lots of people like Jan to come so I can test lots of different scenarios. And then I need lots of different people to come so I can test different scenarios on them as well. So that's essentially how the system works. And ad tester is very, very effective, but like Jan said, layout tester tests so many more variables that there is just more room for improvement. Mm-hmm. And let's see if we've got anything else. Oh, and Kendrick also asks, it would seem that a year-over-year report, monthly, weekly, daily, would be helpful as people start using this over time. Jan?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that we can pull that we have that data. It's maybe not reported in a way that's super clear, clean, but yeah, I mean,
one of the things that we've talked about doing is, and we haven't wanted to do this from a push standpoint because we haven't wanted to annoy all of our publishers, but we've talked about push notifications about weekly, monthly, yearly summaries and things like that that highlight specifically things like EPMB improvements in user experience and that sort of thing. So one of the things that we talked about is these notifications. So maybe that's something that we could add and allow publishers to turn on and off. So, but like Jan said, all that data is there available in both our earnings reporting, advanced reporting.
So yeah, I'd say just go look at you can go to the reporting and just look at reporting by EPMB, and then yeah, we can go there. But
we can go to earns. I don't care if you guys know how little money bishopbjj.com. Oh, here we go.
Anyways, but yeah, if you can just look at your average EPMB for the November last year compared to this year, there's usually with a lot of the Tyler was showing the SEO graphs kind of increasing gradually throughout year over year. We see that the same with the EPMB graphs, kind of just a nice year-over-year increase. Of course, seasonality plays into it too, but
yeah, and you can see here my little jiu-jitsu website's not doing too bad right here, Jan.
Much better than I expected.
Yeah. So you can go and you can obviously select different date ranges and stuff like that and pull your EPMBs and see how you've performed over time. You can look at it on mobile, tablet, desktop, iOS. And like I said, EPMB is actually a really good way to start looking at this information because, my site, for example, I derive a lot of traffic from social media. So if I was actually to look at my earnings overall, let's actually do this as probably a fun experiment with my site because my site just kind of covers some like really basic information on jiu-jitsu that's probably only relevant to a couple people, but I have a good social media following. So you can see here my earnings, I've got this big spike here in September, but it may actually be related more to a traffic spike than it is actually me earning more revenue off of my site. And so if I actually look at EPMB over that same period of time, you can actually see here's how my EPMB has gone. So I'm actually earning the most revenue per visitor in the month of November than I ever have before. So good for me. So that's a great question. I think we had maybe one more in here that we'll get to before we run out of time. Here it is in the chat. Keith says, if we implement Ezoic for the first time to 100% of WordPress, of our WordPress site with 1.5 million unique page views per month, what is the average time until we see an increase in revenue? Would we see a drop at first as Ezoic learns traffic, page layouts, etc.? We're asking average time as we understand all sites are unique.
Yeah, so I mean, with a site that big, I guess I'll address it in two different ways. A site that big, I think within a couple weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, you can start seeing some really good improvements, and then it'll continue as it goes. So, like we said, the more and more data, the more granular we can get at things. So you might see that initial kind of uplift, and then it kind of just gradually goes from there. One thing, you mentioned 100% of traffic. I would never recommend starting with that. I would recommend even if it's 99% of traffic, you need some sort of control to compare against, right? So if you're going and sending 100%, we don't have the baseline of, okay, at this same time period, here's how your original did. So, always have a control. And then the third thing I want to talk about, would you see a decrease at first in traffic or in earnings? I wouldn't say a decrease necessarily, but there is some volatility there. And the reason for that is, we got to figure out what works and what doesn't. So there's a little trial and error. Some combinations may not perform well, but during that first week or so, I would say volatility, not decrease.
Yeah, so 2 to 3 weeks probably is an average time for a site like that. And one of the things I would say is really, really important in this is what we see is that is pretty consistent across the board is sites generally that can produce a fair amount of traffic during that period of time, almost always see an improvement. And the only caveat to that is making sure that things are set up properly. And by set up properly, I mean making sure that you have a lot of placeholders implemented if you're talking about ad tester. So one of the things that maybe is a misconception that people have is that they only want to put placeholders in places that they think are good locations. Well, the whole point of using machine learning on your site to determine what ad locations might work best for different visitors is to add tons and tons of placeholders. That doesn't mean ads are going to show on those locations to every user. And it certainly doesn't mean that an ad is going to show on all of those locations, but it gives the system the permission and the responsibility of testing all those different places. And what we find is the publishers that kind of really add as many placeholders as they possibly can to their site, give the system enough variables that the testing process takes a shorter period of time, and usually the improvements in revenue and user experience happen much quicker because the system has so much more to test.
Yeah, and I would say also, I have some publishers saying, well, if a certain placeholder is not doing well, I want to know so I can remove it. That's never recommended either, because say you have a placeholder that 2% of the time it actually is going to serve an ad. Wouldn't it be better to leave it there and have it fill an ad 2% of the time rather than never have it there? So I know that sometimes, like Tyler said, there's that fear of, oh, there's way too many placeholders, or I don't think this one's going to perform well. That's then taking in your subjective opinion, which everybody has it, and sometimes it's hard to overcome that. But the system's looking at data 100% when it's making those decisions.
That's a great point, Jan. And one of the things that I think is always good for understanding this concept as a publisher is to think about if I put a bunch of placeholders on my site and I really don't like the way that it looks or makes my site look and feel, and I don't think those placeholders will perform well. Well, if they won't, then the system will never show it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, put as many, put all the sizes that fit, put as many positions as you can fit, and then we've got an amazing tech team that's built this out, and I've seen it work time and time again. So.
Excellent. Well, Jan, it looks like we outran the questions once again. So,
all right,
37 minutes in. Thank you guys very much for joining us on another edition of Office Hours. This event will be recorded. Everybody that attended and signed up will get a recording sent to them via email. But if you ever want to check back in on these, we do have a landing page now, ezoic.com /office-hours-QA. You can't forget it. It's easy to find on the site. What we'll do is we'll make the recordings available there, and then you can sign up for future office hours on there as well. We'll do another one in a few weeks. So we're thankful for you guys' feedback, and we look to see you next time.
Yeah, thanks for being with me for my first one.
Yeah, Jan's first one. So in the books. Thanks, guys.